Welcome back to the final segment of today's program here on the Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Ray Guo. We will continue our conversation with the three Presidential Scholar recipients from the United States. I'm going to ask them about their vision of the future of the world. I'm going to start off with Chris. Chris, we live in a globalized village. Everybody's, interconnected in more than, we can imagine, ways. And what is your vision of the world that you're going to be facing, in 3, 4, 5 years when you start practicing as a doctor? What are some of the challenges and problems that you see today that could be a problem more serious or less, once you start working?
Well, I think living in a globalized world is both a blessing and a curse.
Of course.
On one hand, we see the ideas spread rapidly and advances spread rapidly, and especially in the area of medicine and health, we see new technologies advancing very quickly throughout the world, and life expectancies increasing at a rate we haven't seen in a long, long time. But at the same time, that means that problems spread very quickly too.
Exactly.
So I think it will be an exciting time to be a young person, but also a very challenging time. I think the news nowadays is largely dominated by depressing news, like economies are collapsing and wars are being fought. So it will be up to our generation to shoulder the burden and hopefully help build a better future.
Okay, and Connie, we know that one of the things on the minds of many people around the world is climate change. Certainly, I think for people at your age, your generation, that could be a very serious problem in the future if we don't do something starting today, about it. What is your view? What do you, pay attention to such an issue, or is it something of a lesser concern to you? If that's the case, what are some of the more priority issues to you?
From a chemical engineering standpoint, since we study energy a lot, climate change is definitely a big issue.
Yes.
But for many people, I think it's usually, since it's less immediate, you see the effects a long time after the causes. So for many people, it's climate change is more in the back of their minds, but I think it's definitely an important issue that we need to focus on, because if we do things right now, then we'll prevent things in the future, because this is a long-term issue.
Yes.
So I think climate change, energy, these kinds of issues are definitely going to be at the forefront of
for many years.
Future, for many generations. So I think this is one of the main issues that we need to tackle.
Okay, and Tiffany, we're just coming out of possibly the worst, global recession, since the Great Depression of the 1940s, and then certainly, like Chris just mentioned, in a globalized village that we're living, one thing may be happening in one part of the world, but on the other end of the globe, we're felt the impact just the same. How would you then upon graduation or upon graduation from graduate training, how would you, as member of the global village, how would you think the younger generation needs to confront the problem of the so-called the world demonstration effect? When things happening in one place, it could have a direct impact on the other end of the world.
I think that needs to start with an awareness that we live in a global community and not just our own country, our own state or city. A lot of students are egocentric in a geographical sense and think about maybe America as their home, and maybe what's happening over on the other side of Asia doesn't affect them. So I think starting with an education about that globalization should help that issue.
Okay. And also, we know that in the last few years, and maybe one decade or two, that one of the most interesting topics that people have been talking about is the rise of China. And certainly, for those of us who live here in Taiwan, China is the neighbor right across the Taiwan Strait, and China is now today definitely an economic player, one of the most important economies in the world. And things that are happening, taking place in China will have a direct impact all over the world, not just in Taiwan. And I'd just like to ask Chris, what is your impression or understanding about the relationship between China and Taiwan? Nothing political, just your personal impression.
I think that, China and Taiwan obviously share a very complicated and very difficult history. And especially with the recent passage of ECFA, the Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement, there's been a lot of discussion and debate over this.
Exactly.
I think that Taiwan and China policy must primarily be pragmatic, that we must move to improve the quality of life of Taiwanese citizens, and that any sort of hard-line ideological commitments are probably counterproductive. But at the same time, Taiwan should not be naive and understand that China could, is a military might and could represent an existential threat to Taiwan. Not that we think that would happen, but it's certainly out there. And so a nuanced approach that is both pragmatic yet distant, I think, would be wise.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by your knowledge of the issue, because this is not something people with your background, your age, and living in the States may be paying a lot of attention to. But you certainly pay attention to very recent important developments like the signing of ECFA at the end of June. And that would be a very important milestone in cross-strait relations. But let me turn it over to Connie. Connie, you've been to other parts of Asia other than Taiwan?
When I was small, I did visit China twice, and I went to Singapore and Hong Kong. But those were... Do you retain much of a memory from those trips? I was really small, so I can't say I do.
But just, from what you gather, on the internet, from books or whatever, how would you think Taiwan is different from other parts of Asia or places that you might have visited before?
Well, for culture, there are differences, but there's also a lot of similarities, I think, though it's hard for me to say because I haven't been to that many other places in Asia. But I think for Taiwan's relations with other Asian countries, I think, for example, the economic ties are very important. The networks of communications and trades, those are extremely important because, as we talked about previously, the world is becoming more globalized, so these channels of trade and communication are definitely going to be more important.
And Tiffany, let me ask you that, maybe not people of your age, but people my age, when we were going to college 15, 20 years ago, that the thing that when you talk to people that telling them that I came from Taiwan, they often, the first reaction is, oh, Thailand, I heard about it, it's in Southeast Asia and things. But I hope, certainly that's not the case anymore today for your generation. However, upon return, going back to college at the University of Pennsylvania, how would you like to, become that bridge, linking the two cultures and linking Taiwan with the United States, playing your part as an international goodwill ambassador on behalf of both Taiwan and the U.S.?
I think once I entered college, I did find that bridge, that connection was a lot stronger, and a lot of other students had that connection. There's a lot of students at Penn who came back to Taiwan this year, and so that's really nice to know that we are all making the effort to come back to our home country. However, I don't know if the fact that I can relate to your Taiwan-Thailand statement might not be the best thing yet, but all I do is when they make that statement, I just make sure to correct them and explain to them the difference.
Okay. And also, let me turn over to Chris. Chris, we talk about, Taiwan's relations with, neighboring countries and all that, but also in the future, maybe for the younger generation, that national boundaries are no longer to separate one culture or one people from the other. And how would you, as a member of the global village in the future, how would you like to see you play, in addition to your professional practice in medicine, how would you like to play a role in terms of, integration or maybe, interconnecting the different cultures and different peoples in the future?
On a personal level, I think the way I would want to do is through experiences like this one, in which I've had the opportunity to meet people from all over the world and stay. And with internet and Facebook nowadays, it's much easier to stay connected and maintain those relationships and hopefully grow those relationships and keep meeting new people from different places, different experiences, and sharing with them my experiences and my understanding of Taiwan. And primarily through that way, I would.
Okay. And Connie, you and I were talking about renewable energy. And since you're a chemical engineering major, let me ask you, when people talk about Taiwan today, they talk about, hey, this is the island of high tech. Whether it's telecommunication, renewable energy, semiconductor, personal computer, all these things. When you talk about Taiwan, people naturally think about the high tech component of the society. How would you then, in the future, as a Taiwanese American, like to play a role in terms of continuing to maintain Taiwan's competitive edge in those areas?
I think one good way would probably, if I stay in America in the future, to have like maybe joint projects
Yes.
with like companies in Taiwan and work with them on ways of developing new products, engineering products. And
Yes.
I think Taiwan is definitely on the forefront of this. They have a lot of cutting edge products. Like yesterday we visited like an industrial technology research center. And we got to see a lot of their exhibits, and they were definitely on the cutting edge.
Okay. We have about 40 seconds left in the program. I'm going to give each one of you 10 seconds to say something to mom and dad and your friends who are watching today's program. Start off with Connie.
I think I would definitely like to say thanks for all the support for getting me here and being able to experience both my Taiwanese and my American sides.
Okay, good. Chris?
妈妈爸爸，谢谢你的关系。我在台湾有练中文，还没有很好，会练。
Okay, good. And Tiffany?
I'd also like to thank my parents, family, and friends, because without them, I wouldn't be who I am today or even here now.
Okay, good. And certainly want to thank the three of you for taking the time before the camp is over and coming on today's program here on the Taiwan Outlook. I certainly wish all of you the very best in your continued education. Also, when you start working in the real world, all the success in your professional endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank you for watching our program today. I'll see you next time on Macroview Television. Thank you.